qualitative and data analysis. Please kindly note that this workshop is being recorded. And welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg Postgraduate School. My name is Lawrence, and I will be your moderator for today's workshop. I'd like to start off by thanking all the attendees for taking the time to join, and most importantly, our facilitator, Dr. Gabriel, for taking his time to preparing this presentation. Can I just confirm if I am audible enough for going forward so that you can just confirm if you can hear me? Please kindly indicate with a thumbs up.
Yes, Lawrence, I can hear you well.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I also see some thumbs up. So before introducing Dr. Gabriel Monera to you, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules I like to think most of the participants here are aware of. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please kindly raise your virtual hand. And if you do not wish to speak, please kindly type your question in the chat box, and I will then indicate to the presenter to address the question. And as I've stated in the beginning, that the session is being recorded and the presentation slides will be posted on our model communities together with the workshop recording. And I will be sharing a feedback survey for this session. Please kindly fill it in because we use this feedback survey for our reporting as well as
Yeah, Lawrence, can you hear me?
yes, yes, I can.
Okay. There was a loss of sound. I don't know if it's my system here or it's from your side. Lawrence, can you confirm if you can still hear me?
Good morning, Dr. Gabriel. I think Lawrence is having some technical issues.
All right. Okay. So maybe let me just take over from here. Whilst maybe possibly we await for the participant for Lawrence to rejoin us. To the participants, may you just kindly show by virtual hand if you can hear me well, and also if you can see. I'm going to now share my slides with you. Just let me, if you can be able to see the slides that I'm going to share with you. Let me. Okay. Right. I am sharing this screen with you. Just show by virtual hand if you can see this screen that I've shared with you.
Yes, we can see Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you so much. So, like Lawrence, you have said, I think he was now going to move into the process of introducing me. I'm Dr. Gabriel Monera. I'm one of the coordinators here at the Research Capacity Development Unit, and I'm the one who will be facilitating the session for today. So it's quantitative data collection techniques, but I just decided, because when we talk of it's qualitative data collection techniques. Pardon me for the title. It was just a typing error. But I decided to further, when we talk about qualitative data, there's a process of coding and all those other concepts that we talk about. We focus mainly on the generation of themes. So I decided to give it another sort of a sub theme or a sub title to understanding the foundations and processes of analyzing qualitative data, right? So this is going to be more of I tried as much as possible to include examples so that I think it is my wish that by the time that we conclude this session for today, all those who are in attendance, if you were having a problem with qualitative data analysis, then that will be a thing of the past. So that is my wish. So I wish.
Apologies there.
Okay, I think Lawrence have rejoined us.
Apologies there. I
Lawrence,
just had some.
okay,
Yeah, I just had some technical issues there. Yeah.
okay. So I had already started with the process. I introduced myself, so I've already started with the presentation. So I think maybe when I've concluded, then you can do the other processes that possibly we're supposed to do pertaining to other announcements like RCDMS and so on. If that was okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So
Okay, not a problem. Thank you, Doc.
okay. So
Okay, sure.
I'll proceed with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
All right, great. Okay, so like I was saying, it is my wish that all of us, by the time that we finish, we conclude, we only have an idea of what is this, how do we analyze qualitative data. And from my experience as a research writing consultant, I've received quite a lot of you know, people who come to consult, mainly students, sometimes some staff members, to consult on qualitative data analysis. So I decided to make this as much comprehensive as possible, so that at the end there's a clear understanding of what is it that we are dealing with and what is it that we are talking about when we make reference to qualitative data analysis. So this is the outline of my presentation. I will just introduce, then we talk about qualitative data analysis, move on to some ethical considerations. Remember, ethics is always, whenever we talk about data, the issues of research design, results, then we have to also make reference to ethical considerations. Then from there, I'll just conclude, then hand over to Lawrence so that he can lead us into the open discussion session where you can ask questions, or you can also share with us your experiences and other comments that you would want to contribute to the conversation that we are having today. Right. So what is it that we call qualitative data analysis? So it's not a new concept, when you talk of qualitative as a research design itself. So I think the theme that we were dealing with, some session from last month on our workshops, we have dealt with these research designs, both quantitative and qualitative. So different speakers, different facilitators, they have facilitated sessions that are based on different aspects of both qualitative and quantitative research design. But I'm just going to, kind of give a summary of what is it that we call qualitative data analysis, even in terms of qualitative data itself. I will give some comparisons between quantitative and qualitative so that we know, all of us know what is it that we are dealing with. So when we talk of qualitative data analysis, we are referring to a systematic and rigorous process that is, it usually it appears as more of interpretive or subjective, right? So this is a systematic process of examining non-numerical data, mostly texts, images, recordings, to derive meaning and understanding. So you want to understand. So this is you have to delve into the lived experiences of the participants. They are the ones that you sort of draw experiences from. It seeks to explore experiences, perspectives, processes, and social context. So, like I've said, the focus is on non-numerical data like interviews, transcripts, videos, photos. When you are dealing maybe with kids, those minors, maybe you can use photos so that from the photos, then you can draw the data that you want from that observations and other techniques. I've presented on techniques before that are used in qualitative data analysis. So the aim is to explore how people make sense of their world rather than test pre-defined hypotheses, like what do we do in quantitative data analysis or in quantitative research design. The process, it is iterative. And when we say iterative, we are simply meaning that the researchers, they have to go back and forth between the data itself and their interpretation. So you have to, it is a process, sort of a repetitive a process where you have to be, you go back and forth, in terms of the data. Yeah, yes, I have a session. Yeah, she's there. You can go. She's there. Okay. All right. I'm sorry for that. I had someone who had just knocked on my door. Okay, let's just proceed. So I was saying the process is iterative, meaning that the researchers have to go back and forth between the data and their interpretations. So it's more of a repetitive. You have to continuously do that during the course of qualitative data analysis, and also it allows deep exploration of lived experiences. Commonly, we normally use it in social sciences, education, health, and policy research. So because of this quality that it allows deep exploration of lived experiences of the participants that you would have sort of maybe included in your study. So this is just a sort of a synthesis or a summary table that I put. In terms of data type, I've already mentioned that words, images, narratives. You can have even videos, sometimes observations, and so on. Then the research goal: understanding meaning and experience. The sample, usually it's a small sample, and in most cases, purposive sampling. So you have to purposefully pick your participants in terms of the objective that you want to achieve within the study, or remember, you want to collect the data from these participants. So the data has to speak to the question, to your topic, or to the questions that you want to answer. So purposive sampling is the one that is the technique that is commonly and widely applied. Then the data collection, interviews, focus groups, observations, analysis approach, thematic, content analysis, or narrative analysis. So I've seen a lot of thematic, from the themes that you would have generated, then you present or you analyze your data, you present your findings in terms of those themes that you would have identified. Right. So some differences between the quantitative and qualitative research designs. When it's qualitative, the assumption it's about the world. The assumption is that there are multiple realities. But whereas when you look at quantitative, the assumption is that there's a single reality that can be measured by a measuring instrument. Then the purpose for qualitative, I've already mentioned that we seek to understand the social situation from participants' perspectives. Whereas on quantitative, you want to establish relationships between measured variables. So you have a specific dependent and independent variables that you would want to measure relationship, and also in some cases the direction of causality between within that particular relationship. Then the research methods and processes for qualitative, they are usually flexible, changing strategies. the design it images, data are collected, hypothesis is not needed to begin the research, and it is inductive in nature. So you start from, when you say inductive, you start from specific, then you move to general. So you can actually use it to develop a theory. Whereas when you look at quantitative, the procedures are established before the study begins, a hypothesis is formulated before research can begin, and it is deductive in nature. So you start from general. So usually you are informed when you build your hypothesis, you are informed by theory. Then from there, you can now move from the theory to your specific results that you want to obtain. Then the researcher's role, the researcher participates and becomes immersed in the research or social setting when you are looking at qualitative data. But on quantitative, the researcher is ideally an objective observer who neither participates in nor influences what is being studied. So you have variables that you just have to measure. In some cases, the secondary data, they are already measured. You just have to analyze that data. So the issue of researcher bias is not more of an issue on quantitative rather than on the qualitative side. Then the generalizability, detailed context-based generalizations on qualitative, right? Whereas on quantitative, you can make universal context-free generalizations, right? So just maybe continuing, there's also the issue of methods, but I've already mentioned, a bit of that. The methods includes focus groups, structured or in-depth interviews and reviews of documents for types of themes. That's maybe document and content analysis. That's for qualitative. Also, primarily inductive in nature, and you actually use it, like I've mentioned before, to formulate a theory or a hypothesis. Whereas on quantitative, in terms of methods, surveys are used as data collection tools, there's structured interviews, measurements, and observations, reviews of records or documents for numeric or quantifiable information. Then you can draw numeric information from that, or you can take information that you want, then code it numerically, assign numerical codes to it. Then still on qualitative, more subjective, describes a problem or condition from the point of view of those experiencing it, text-based, more in-depth information on a few cases, unstructured or semi-structured response options, no statistical tests, and less generalizable. So it's just more of a replication of what I've been saying in the previous slide. Whereas the quantitative, there's more objective, provides observed effects, interpreted by researchers of a program or a problem or condition, number-based, less in-depth, but more breadth of information across a large number of cases. So this can be sort of a longitudinal kind of, when we use longitudinal data, then do a longitudinal kind of an analysis. So which is spread over a length period of time. Then fixed response options, measurements or observations, statistical tests are used for analysis, and it is more generalizable, right? Then these are just an overview of the qualitative data collection techniques. I've presented on this before: interviews, focus group discussions, observations, document or artifact analysis, diaries and journals, and visual methods, like maybe, for example, photo voice that I was talking, that I also mentioned. Photo voice usually for minors. Yeah, you can maybe take photos, try to analyze those photos. Even for people who are adults as well, like one can provide photos, then you can do your research based on that. Diaries and journals, for when you maybe lived experiences of a person, and so on. Document or artifact analysis, observation. I've presented on this before. Interviews, structured, semi-structured, and structured. Then let's move on now into the qualitative data analysis now. So I've tried by all means to put this in terms of steps, right? So these are steps that you have to follow when you are analyzing qualitative data, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to do it in that order, but some of the things are just done when you are possibly looking at one aspect, then you can include aspects of another, step that I've put here. So I've just tried to sort of simplify it for us that we are able to follow and know all the elements or all the aspects that must be included for your qualitative data analysis to be of a good or a high quality, right? So the first step is that after you've collected your data, so now maybe possibly you held interviews, so you write maybe some notes that you'll be taking, then also you have recorded the interview. You go in the process of transcribing that audio into text, and now that you have your text, right? So this is the first step. You have to familiarize with the data that you have collected from the participants, right? So in actual fact, this is the foundation of qualitative analysis. It's important for you to know your data intimately, right? So this involves repeatedly reading transcripts, listening to recordings, and making initial notes. So this process of transcribing is actually a process that is supposed to be done by someone who is an expert in that. But I know that in many cases we just do it on our own, But they are, it's someone who really knows how to transcribe, who can capture other, sort of things that we cannot capture ourselves if you are not really knowledgeable of how to transcribe audio to text. Right? Let maybe a person breathe, takes a sigh, breathe. That has to be shown also within the text, of that particular participant, right? But when you do not when you're not an expert in that, then you're not able to do that. You just write it like you're just writing, from a where in a way that you are failing to capture some other sort of intricacies or some other subtle, elements within the response of the participant, which could be important for your study. So it also you have to look out for tones, emotions, metaphors, pauses, or anything unusual. And there's a way in which that must be shown in the text, right? So if you are not experienced, then you're not going to be able to do that. So in most cases, sometimes you seek for an experienced, transcriber. You have to outsource that. Then the person transcribes the audios for you into text. So the process also allows you to begin identifying potential areas of interest for coding, right? So this is where you begin the process of coding. So you're just identifying areas that could be of interest, is speaking to the topic and the research questions, as well as the objective that you want to achieve with the study, right? Then it's usually you are encouraged to write margin notes or brief summary of each interview or document. So that is, so that sort of a memo kind of, where you also have to you have to take some notes, on the margins. You have to write some notes that are of interest. Let's say maybe you've identified the potential area of interest for coding, then you have to put some notes on the margin, right? Then this second step now is coding the data, right? So coding, I think a lot nowadays, many people are now using softwares like Atlas TI, for example, to do the coding. I'm not really, I've never used that last year. I'm still yet to attend the training as well, so that I'm interested in knowing what it really does. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about coding, both from more of a traditional perspective. This is the coding that you do yourself as the researcher, right? So, but what is it that we call coding? So this is a very crucial process in qualitative data analysis that helps one to break down large volumes of data into manageable, meaningful units, right? So the codes you can generate as many codes as possible. Maybe you can start with 100 codes. So then it's a process, it's a repetitive process. When you continue to sort of record, then end up narrowing the codes into a sort of manageable units. Then at the end, you can generate themes from that. So it involves assigning labels to segments of text to capture the essence of what is being said by the participant, right? We have 3 types of coding that I'm going to talk about here. There's what we call open coding, then there's XL coding, and selective coding, right? So when you talk of open coding, it is the initial stage of coding where the data is examined line by line, right? You examine line by line and assign labels to anything that stands out for you. But remember, you have your research topic in mind, you have your objectives, you also have your questions, your research questions in mind. Remember, you have questions that you need to answer, you have objectives that you want to reach. You have a topic that you have to do justice to. You have a problem that you need to solve. So when you are reading all that, you're doing, when you are coding, you're doing that with all that in mind. So within this open coding stage, or within this step, as a researcher, you have to approach the data without preconceived categories, right? So by doing that, you actually allow themes to emerge sort of, let me say organically. You allow the themes to just emerge on their own. You don't have to force the data to give you themes that you want. So you don't approach this process with preconceived themes in mind, right? Then when you have finished with open coding, you move to XDR coding, right? So in this phase, you are now shifting focus to identifying connections between the codes. Okay, you look at related codes and group them together to form categories, and you also look at the relationship between these categories as well. So you have to explore that relationship between the categories. If there's no relationship, then they cannot be grouped. You can only group things that are related, isn't it? Then when you have done XL coding, so from open coding, when you do XL coding, it's like you are sort of grouping again. So it's like you are coding the codes that you are having. So you are sort of grouping now, categorizing those codes. Then from after you've done XL coding, you move to selective coding. So this is sort of the final stage now, which involves integrating and refining categories into central themes, right? So as a researcher now, you identify the core categories that represent the central narrative or theoretical constructs in the data, right? From I think maybe from this, we can also notice that the coding approach itself, it can also be inductive or it can be deductive as well. So when you say inductive, we are saying the codes and themes, they emerge directly from the data without a prior framework, right? So you don't have any, you are just the codes must just come up on their own. You don't have a framework that they are using for you to be able to sort of generate those those quotes. You don't have any tool that you are measuring the text against it for you to generate the code. But it can also be a deductive process as well, where the coding is guided by existing theories or predefined concepts. So I've seen some text that is like that, where there's some theories, then those theories have certain constructs, then we use those constructs to from the responses of the participants. They are looking for those constructs. But I think the inductive one is more richer than the deductive. This is just an example of coding, right? So we are going to start with let's just follow each other in this whole example. So the other examples are linked to this sort of escape that I'm using here, right? I was doing this semester. I'm doing a postgraduate diploma in research supervision. Right. So I think one of my, you will see my examples, they are linked to more of supervision, because that is what I was doing. So when I was trying to work out something, I could use examples that are closer to what I was learning recently. So this is a raw transcript escape that we are having. So we have transcribed your data, then there's this transcript that says it's one of the respondents. At first, I felt really overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start with my proposal, and my supervisor was not very responsive. Sometimes it would take weeks to get feedback, and I was left unsure about what I was doing right or wrong. But after a few months, things improved. We had more regular meetings, and I started feeling more confident. So this is the response that they have got. It's a raw transcript, escaped. Right, that you've got from it's a response we got from one of the participants. So from this, you start by do the process of open coding, where you're looking for initial labels for meaningful segments, right? So it's just initial labels. You are just labeling the text into sort of labels that will give you meaningful segments even later, right? So like for example, so this is just the part of the text, like for example, where I say I felt really overwhelmed. These are interesting sort of things that are emerging from the text that I'm interested in. Okay, so like for example, when the respondent say felt really overwhelmed, you can code that to initial anxiety. So it's up to you. It's you who generate, our vocabulary differ. But at the end of the day, if your coding is correct, if I'm also to code the same data, we should arrive at similar themes, more or less, right? Didn't know where to start, lack of guidance, right? So you are breaking down that sort of whole element of the text into just a smaller unit, sort of, right? Didn't know where to start, lack of guidance, supervisor was not very responsive, limited supervisor engagement, weeks to get feedback, delayed feedback, left unsure, uncertainty in research process, more regular meetings, improved communication, started feeling more confident, growing confidence. So yeah, interrogating the text. Right? When I say interrogating, I don't mean you must you have to force the text to speak to what your preconceived themes that they are having in mind. That's why I said it's good to follow sort of an inductive process where you have to start from scratch without any preconceived themes in mind. Right. Okay. So at the end, you can see that now we are just having these sort of initial labels, like initial anxiety, lack of guidance, limited supervisor engagement, delayed feedback, uncertainty in research process, improved communication, growing confidence. So these are the ones that will go now into the next step, where you are now doing Excel coding. Okay, so it's like you are now coding these labels. Okay, in other words. So you can look now that, okay, now you are grouping them. into sort of a broader theme, right? Supervisor engagement, you can group where the participants said limited supervisor engagement, delayed feedback, improved communication, then that could be supervisor engagement, right? Where the labels of initial anxiety, uncertainty, research process, growing confidence, that will become student emotions and growth. Then lack of guidance, more regular meetings, support structures. Right. So now from this whole text that I was, the whole escape that I was having, I ended up with now these groups after Excel coding, right? So then we further now from the Excel coding, we move to selective coding, where you are now coming up with your core themes, right? These are your teams now that they are coming up with. So from supervisor engagement, student emotions and growth, support structure. So we now want a team that will capture like these all these elements that they have been the outcome of Excel coding, all these groupings. So we end up with impact of supervision quality on student confidence, right? One, when we talk about student emotions and growth, progression from anxiety to empowerment. So we are capturing both. I think I'll talk about this later as well, because it's another step that we also have to think about that when we are doing the this process as well. Okay, so we remember student emotions and growth. There's both positive and negative there, but they are now being captured in one thing: progression from anxiety to empowerment. Role of communication in research development, capturing support structures. Like, so we have the role of communication in research development as well, which is another major theme that can also come out of this. So, communication. Remember, when there's no guidance, when there's no communication, there's no guidance. More regular meetings. So all these sort of labels, they are now being represented within these teams that we are having. So from that text, we come up with these three themes. Remember, this you do it for every participant or for each interview that you had, if it was only primarily interviews only, right? So you have to do it to do this process for all of them, right? Then this is the third step now. So I think I've demonstrated the coding. This is the third step, categorization now and theme development. So once you have the list of codes, you begin grouping them into categories. Okay, so in other words, we are saying the families of meaning. Those categories, they will help you to identify themes that are central to answering your research questions. Don't forget about the research questions. Don't forget about the objectives. Don't forget about the topic. Don't forget about the significance of the study that you are doing, right? Okay, so for example, let's say maybe now we are in the process of identifying themes that are central to answering your research question. When you are having a theme that is strong, it must have these qualities. It must be coherent and internally consistent. It must be distinct from other themes and also supported with multiple data extracts. Those escapes that I was like the one that I was showing. You also have to avoid vague or overlapping themes, as well as ensuring that themes offer analytical insights, not just surface level descriptions. Right? So they must carry analytical weight. They should not just be descriptive summaries. I've had an experience of one text from a student. The whole chapter, it was chapter 4, where the student was presenting the results, right? But that was 80 pages. It was a qualitative study, but it had 80 pages. Why? Because the student simply repeated what the respondents were saying, right? So there was no, the process of coding was not strong, right? So you have to avoid surface level descriptions. This is just an example of categorization and theme development. A raw transcript is kept again. My supervisor always made time to meet and explain things clearly. I could ask questions without feeling judged. She even helped me plan my research timeline and encouraged me when I struggled. Right. So this is an excerpt from the participants. When you are categorizing, open coding first, so these are, we have gone through the coding process, right? So these are the initial labels we got from open coding. Accessible supervisor, clear explanations, safe space for questions, practical guidance, emotional encouragement. So it's coming all from this text, right? These are labels that we can label this text to, right? Then you can categorize this now to supervisor availability. So when you're coming up with categories, it's just like you're going to the process again of Excel coding. So they are just grouping, right? Okay, okay, so it's like you're doing Excel coding here. So supervisor availability, then accessible supervisor. Academic support, clear explanations, practical guidance, right? Emotional support, safe space for questions and encouragement, right? So then from this, now you can categorize this into this theme now. You can categorize this into a theme that we can call supportive supervision as a catalyst for student confidence, which means it's a theme now capturing all these categories. It's a theme capturing all the categories. So you can call it supportive supervision as a catalyst for student confidence. So you can see that now this theme, it integrates academic and emotional support, showing how engaged and approachable supervisor contributes to a student's research confidence and process. It holds analytical weight by linking specific behaviors, like, for example, clarity, availability, emotional presence, to broader outcomes like confidence and motivation. Right. So you can see a theme, you don't just come up with a theme just because you just feel like maybe I must just call it this. So there's a lot of thinking, deep thinking that goes into this. So from categorization and theme development, you move to data interpretation. So this is where mostly thematic analysis is followed and so on. Descriptive analysis, then so we are now shifting from what was said to why it matters. Mark that. We are shifting now from what was said to why it matters. So this is where analysis becomes analytical and theoretical, not just descriptive. We are now looking at what does this mean in this context. Those are questions that you should be asking. Why might this be happening? We have to go beyond the surface to explore underlying assumptions, power dynamics, or social meanings. You can also apply, this is where you triangulate with theories as well. So you have to link your interpretations to literature, what others have found, to theory, concepts that explain the phenomena, or context as well. For example, institutional, cultural, historical, right? You have to consider what participants are saying. What are they not saying? And also the broader implications of those silences or emphasis that are coming from the participants themselves, right? So this is where a conversation of participants also comes into play. So your interpretation, it can confirm, challenge, or refine existing knowledge. Okay, so those are three elements that it should do at the end. You have to confirm existing knowledge. It can challenge dominant assumptions. It can also refine or extend the theoretical understanding, or even develop a completely new theory, from what you would have, from the interpretation that you are doing. An example of interpretation, I'm using the previous theme, supportive supervision, as a catalyst for student confidence, right? So these are the sort of the elements that should be within the data interpretation. So I'll move with the elements, slide by slide, moving the elements. So this is how, in other words, how you should write it, So there must be a descriptive summary. Students reported feeling more confident when supervisors were approachable, gave regular feedback, and encouraged questions, right? Then the interpretation. So remember, this is just the, maybe within the same paragraph or two paragraphs linked, in the manner that they are writing, and also providing excerpts from from the transcripts, what the respondents is support of what you are saying or what you are claiming, with evidence from what the participants have said, right? So from descriptive summary, you move on to interpretation. We are now interpreting this finding. This finding suggests that supervisor relationships function not only as academic guidance structures, but also as critical sites of emotional and psychological support, right? In a postgraduate context, marked by isolation and high attrition, the relational quality of supervision can be just as important as academic content delivered. So it's you who is writing now. Okay, you're not just telling us that the participants said this, then you list what the participants have said. Yes, you didn't. You are not within the process. We are not seeing you within the process. We are not hearing your voice within this data analysis. Okay, so from interpretation, why might this be happening? Many students, especially first generation or underrepresented postgraduates, may lack informal academic networks. A supportive supervisor fills this gap, providing both validation and clarity. This aligns with Tito's theory of academic integration, which posits that students who feel connected to their institution and mentors are more likely to persist and succeed. Can you hear that? Right. So you are moving on. Remember, you are applying your mind. It's you who is answering that question. Why might this be happening? What is not being said? There's no mention that institutional mechanisms to support supervisors in developing these skills, suggesting emotional labor is unacknowledged or unevenly distributed. So this is what you are drawing, inferences that you are getting from the analysis that you are doing. So these are you are now contributing to theory now. You are now contributing also to literature. We are bringing other things that are not being even mentioned. That could maybe form or be central to the contribution that they are making. Broader implication: institutions should consider formal training in emotional intelligence and communication for supervisors, which may enhance retention and progression, especially in contexts where students face structural disadvantages or those who were marginalized. So that's your broader implication, right? So if you have done this, you have interpreted your data comprehensively, right? With all these elements, from descriptive summary, interpretation, why might this be happening, what's not being said, and broader implications of that finding. It's important also to talk about constant comparison. So this, when we talk of constant comparison, it is a technique that is used continuously during coding, categorization, and theme development. So you can compare. Remember, when you are comparing even the codes that you are coming up with. So you can compare existing codes and categories to check for similarities, differences, and potential refinements. Right? Why do you have to undergo this process? It will help you to maintain consistency and also to review subtle variations. There are certain underlying variations that will be there. Some hidden variations that are not simply, comprehensible. So you have to sort of review that through comparisons. It also prevents the premature formulation of themes. Sometimes you can formulate your themes prematurely, right? Before there's data saturation, then you're already, coming up forming themes. So while this comparison, constant comparison, is a sort of it's usually used in grounded theory. When you are doing qualitative, that is following the grounded theory. It is also valuable in all qualitative approaches, not only on grounded theory. So it is valuable in all qualitative approaches. It supports theory building and strengthens the analytical depth of the findings that you would have obtained. So this is just an example of constant comparison. I'm using the same, from the themes that I was talking about. This is the major topic, right? The research topics, experiences of postgraduate students during supervision, right? Participant A have said, my supervisor gave very detailed feedback, which helped me improve my writing. She was always constructive and patient, right? So the initial code can be put as supportive feedback. So this whole, response, we are summing it up to supportive feedback. Then participant B, my supervisor was very critical. At first, I felt discouraged, but over time, I realized it helped me produce better work, right? So the initial code can be challenging feedback. But from these two, you can see that both they are discussing feedback and how it contributed to their academic growth, both participant A and participant B. But their experiences are different, right? The experiences, they are different in both tone and emotional impact, right? Because the other one felt discouraged, but the other one, felt that the feedback was very constructive, so positive, felt positive. So you can see that if you do a comparison of these two escapes from these two participants, you can see that there's a distinction that is revealed there. Okay, while the nature of the feedback differs, one is supportive, which on participant A, versus critical on participant B. They both ultimately foster the development of these two students. Okay, they foster development of the two students. So you can see why the constant comparison is important. So this now could be the resultant action. You can create a broader category now, like feedback that promotes growth. Then you have your sub-themes under that: emotionally supportive feedback, constructively critical feedback. So you can, I think, from what we have talked about so far, you can see that this whole process of qualitative data analysis just involves an issue of categorizing and recategorization until you arrive at those final themes, or those few themes that you'll be focusing on. So when you sort of do the constant comparison, it does not only strengthen the coding accuracy, but it also uncover dimensions within a shared experience. Like those differences within a shared, they both share that the like I'm saying, the broader category. At the end, it promoted their growth. For both, they share that, but how it promoted their growth, it differs, right? Memo writing. It's important that you you write memos for analytical reflections that will help you to track your thoughts, insights, and decisions. Memos are also a private space to record those aha moments, the doubts, or contradictions. So remember, when it's the notes that you make during the process when you are doing your data analysis, then you also have to make those notes. The memos, they are also part of audit trail and enhanced transparency. You are encouraged to write memos, especially after interviews, during coding, and after identifying themes. So the memos as well, these notes can also help you to further identify other themes as well, that you can include as part of your discussion. This is an example of a memo. You can just write it to also properly in a sort of a professional manner with memo date, data source. This was on 22 April 2025. The data source was interview with participant 4. Theme in focus, navigating supervisor expectations. Right. So this is just an example of a note. Participant 4 described feeling hesitant to ask for clarification because they feared appearing incompetent. This resonates with earlier interviews, but this is the first time someone explicitly links it to their identity as a first-generation student. Could this reluctance reflect broader power dynamics and imposter syndrome among students who lack academic social capital? I'm beginning to see a possible theme around silenced struggles, where students internalize confusion rather than express it. Might explore this further through Bourdieu's concepts of habitus and symbolic power. So you are linking it to theories now. So in this whole process, it actually aids theory building when you do memo writing. You are moving beyond description, like for example, feeling hesitant, to interpretation and theoretical linkage. You are now linking it to power and social capital, including the habitus theory as well, right? Then in a way, you are opening new analytic direction as well, where you are coming up with the theme that is around silent struggles that can shape also the formulation of the core themes in your study, right? The process encourages the integration of data, literature, and theories. So it's important that you do memo writing. Then the theoretical sensitivity. It's important that you also have to be sensitive to theories as well. Here we are referring to your awareness and capacity to see meaningful patterns and theoretical links in the data. Right, it's you who have to see that, from what the participants are saying. You have to generate theoretical links as well. So it means being able to connect what participants say to broader concepts or frameworks. Like for example, I think you can see in this note, this is being being linked to the concept of habitus and symbolic power by Borges. Then, okay, so it also requires open-mindedness, but also engagement with literature to make sense of the findings. So you have to make sense of the findings. You do not have to force the data to fit theory. I think I've already spoke about that. I had one professor who used to call it torturing the data so that it must confess. So you don't have to force it to fit theory. You have to let the data guide you, but remain theoretically informed. It's a process of reading and reflecting continuously that strengthens theoretical sensitivity. So it's a process. You must continue reading and reflecting. Then triangulation. Triangulation, you can do it in terms of data. You can also do it in terms of results from existing of empirical findings from existing studies. You can also triangulate in terms of theories as well. Okay, so when you are triangulating, in a way, you are improving the trustworthiness of your study, right? So like I've said, from data, you can use multiple data sources, interviews, observations. You can also use methods like qualitative document review, or you can use investigators as well. But this is where mixed methods approach also sort of garner some kind of support for being giving more sort of enhanced findings or conclusions. Why? Because you are already triangulating two different research designs, quantitative, qualitative, then bringing them together. It's a form of triangulation already that you have done in terms of the method or research design. Then the goal is not to prove a finding, but to enrich and validate it, right? So that is the goal when you're triangulating. You have to use practical examples. For example, you compare teacher interviews and classroom observations as a strategy. It's used to enhance credibility and deepen understanding, right? Then reflexivity, always very important, because remember we said you as a researcher, you are also immersed in the data collection exercise as well. Sometimes you will be investigating sensitive issues, emotional issues, that you end up being emotionally attached to that. I've had some students who consulted and said when they were collecting data, they ended up even sometimes crying with the participants because of certain things that you'll be hearing. So some might need even a process of career, sort of emotional support, after you have done that, So you will need maybe psychological support and so on, depending on the topic that you're investigating. So reflexivity is about critically being aware of your role as a researcher in the process. Right? You have to consider your background, values, assumptions, and biases. It's important in any qualitative study. You have to talk about yourself as well in the context of your findings. How, as a researcher, you could be having influence on the findings that you have obtained as an outcome of the whole data collection exercise that you undertook. You have to document your position and reflections. It strengthens the ethical integrity of your research. So you are encouraged to keep a reflective journal throughout the study, and also positionality statements. They will help readers understanding how your identity may have shaped the research. Okay. So it's a process. I think qualitative data, it involves a lot of ethics or ethical conduct that is pinned upon you as the researcher. Because if you do not have good sort of ethical conduct as a researcher, I don't think some of these things one will be just lying, giving us the answers that we need as reviewers. Because now, the rules of the game. Right? So high ethical conduct must always be observed at all times. We'll talk a little bit about ethics when I'm reaching the conclusion of this. Then saturation. It's important that you reach data saturation. Don't construct themes prematurely. Right? Prematurely, then you already have themes. So saturation, when we talk about saturation, we are saying a point where no new themes or codes are emerging from the data. That is also what will tell you that, okay, you have so that's why the number of participants as well that you have to include in your study. Usually, the more they are, the better. So that your teams are not constructed, they are not sort of capture and really answer or speak to the questions that you want to answer, or to the problem that you want to solve, to the objectives, to the topic. So saturation is a guide to data adequacy. It's not a rigid rule though, right? So to data adequacy, to show that your data has been adequate in sort of answering the questions is speaking to the topic and the objectives that need to be achieved. So it is context specific. Some studies reach saturation quickly, others they require more data. So if they require more data, maybe you will be required to go and do interviews again. In phenomenology or narrative studies, depth may be more important than the breadth. Right. Keeping assessing saturation during analysis is not just at data collection, right? So you have to also do to assess whether have you reached saturation or not, and you have to reach saturation. And within your study, within your findings, when you are presenting your findings, you have to talk about data saturation. The audit trail as well, important. When we talk about an audit trail, we are simply referring to a clear, detailed record of your research and analytical process. How did you analyze the data? So if someone is auditing, they should be able to see, okay, this is where the process began and this is where the process ended. And there should be evidence of that. Those the interview recordings, the transcripts, the coding process, so on, some memos, notes, and so on. It includes your coding framework, memos, decisions made, changes to codes or themes, and interpretation notes. It is important for rigor, credibility, and peer review. You can use software or manual templates to track your progress. And like I've said also, a lot of people are using softwares as well for analyzing qualitative data. You just put your sometimes even the audio, then the transcription process is done by the software. It goes into this process of coding until it gives you themes. I just don't know how good it is in terms of the quality compared when you do the coding in this conventional or traditional way, right? Mention that it's also important that journals often look for evidence of audit trails when reviewing qualitative papers. So some journals, depending on where you are submitting, they might ask you for this audit trail, right? Then issues of ethics. It's important to keep in mind that the issue of informed consent, confidentiality, voluntary participation, data protection. We can also talk of non-maleficence, power imbalances and vulnerability, cultural and contextual sensitivity, where we can also add issues of emotional and psychological risk, misrepresentation and bias, feedback and reciprocity. Like for instance, it's important that you consider providing participants with summaries or findings, especially in community-based research. How you must ask yourself how the research also improve the quality of life of the participants and so on. If it doesn't improve, the living standards of the participants or anything that has to do with the participants, then why are you even involving them in the research in the first place? So the ethics is actually an ongoing commitment, not just a formality for clearance. Something that you have to do throughout the whole process. Even after you've got the clearance, it doesn't mean you must go and behave unethically because you have an ethical clearance. You see, so it's important also to document ethical decisions that you would have made, right? So you can document them and also reflect on the methodology chapters, within the methodology chapter as well. You also have to reflect on that when you are now analyzing when you're analyzing the data. Issue of non-maleficence, I think it's also important. It's a very foundational principle. So sometimes even when you're asking questions that are well intended, they can cause harm if care is not taken. So issues of power balances as well and vulnerability. Remember, sometimes you can get the responses that you are not even that you are expecting, but because there's a sort of a power play between you and the participants, right? Still on the issue of non-maleficence, safeguarding participants from emotional, psychological, or reputational harm. It's very important. Avoiding intrusive questioning that may trigger distress or trauma, in those research that are sensitive. Also providing support or referrals if sensitive issues arise. Prioritizing the well-being and dignity of participants above research outcomes. It's very, very important. So this, I move to the conclusion. I'll give these concluding remarks that qualitative data analysis, it is an iterative, reflective, and systematic process, right? It begins with immersion and coding and moves toward categorization, theme development, up to interpretation, and also all those other steps that I've added, so that maybe the to guide the conversation, so that the whole conversation is a guided, meaningful conversation. Apply techniques like memo writing, reflexivity, triangulation, audit trails to enhance credibility and depth of your findings. Then I also encourage that you relate, to all this process that we have saying. If you are currently doing a qualitative study, then relate them to your own study that you are doing, whether education, health, or social research. Right. And with this, I reach the end of my presentation, and I'm handing over to Mr. Lawrence Asani, the moderator for this session, to lead us into the open discussion segment. And also, if there's anything, Mr. Asani, that you wanted to say initially when we started that you could not say, then just lead us from here and forth. Thank you.
In that regard, once again, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you so much again for giving us such an insightful workshop, and thank you again for your expertise and your inputs definitely on this topic, concepts of qualitative data analysis. I'm sure all the participants have really taken a thing or two of how they can be able to analyze the qualitative data. So we really do appreciate that quite a lot here at the Research Capacity Development Unit. So in the beginning, I just wanted to speak about our recently launched RCDMS, which is the Research Capacity Development Unit management system. So if you haven't signed up or registered for our RCDMS management system, please kindly send us an email and we will let you know, or we'll direct you on how to register on our RCDMS system. So you can send us an email at rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za, and we'll assist you further on how to register on the RCDMS system, because we will be migrating fully to the RCDMS system, moving away from the Teams workshop. So that is the new research capacity development management system that we'll be moving on to. And also I've shared the feedback survey in the chat session. Please kindly fill it in. As I stated in the beginning, that we use this for our reporting purposes, as well as to provide some kind words to our facilitator. And by filling in this feedback survey, this ensures that you also get a certificate of attendance. Then I also see there's a comment from Gibson. Yes, we will share the presentation slides with you guys on our model communities. So sometimes if you see there isn't presentation slides on model, is because we haven't received them from our facilitators, because we actually request this presentation slides from the facilitators. So sometimes there might be a delay, or some facilitators might not wish to share their presentation slides, but we also ensure that we always have recording for the session available for you to go back and to listen to that workshop recording. So we will ensure that we try by all means to update all the presentation slides if we do get them from the facilitators going forward. So in that regard, we can just open the discussion. We can just open the floor to questions if there's anything that you might not have gotten well or you want us to put it together. Dr. Gabriel is available to answer your question. And I can see Dr. Gabriel's enabled his camera. I'm sure you can all see him. So thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel. And the floor is now open to questions. I will enable everybody's mic. So if you do wish to speak, please kindly unmute your mic and speak, or if you do wish to type in the chat session, let's engage. Thank you.
Lawrence, I don't see my chat. Then just be there to check if there's anything that the participants are saying on the chat box.
All right, no problem. I monitor the chat. There's no hand raised. Are there any questions or any comments from the participants?
I think from what I mentioned from the beginning, I tried as much as possible to make it the whole process sort of comprehensive and very comprehensible. So I wouldn't be surprised, maybe possibly, if we don't get questions, but we still encourage discussion from the participants, including even your experiences as well. You have been doing this kind of research. So we can also talk about how you have experienced it and so on, anything that you can share with us.
So I actually have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead, Kanda.
On step 10, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I'll go back there. Let me just go so that maybe the reference could be more specific. Okay, on 10, on
Yes.
saturation. Okay, sorry,
Yes,
I repeated 10.
saturation.
This one,
Saturation.
saturation. Okay.
Yes. How? Because I see you said something about one reaching saturation in their data collection, right?
Yes.
So how does one then say that they've reached saturation if they're doing textual analysis?
If they are doing
textual analysis.
Factual analysis.
Textual analysis.
Did you say factual?
Text. I'm analyzing text.
Textual. All right.
Yes, textual. Yes.
Okay, but that it also depends. Remember, when you do textual analysis, I believe you want to talk about content analysis, sort of.
Narrative,
where you are sort of harvesting or mining text from policies and other documents.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that it also depends now on the extensiveness of your search, because remember, such kind of when we are talking of saturation, we are simply saying that you are no more getting any new sort of it could be codes or it could be new themes from the text. There's no new answers that you are getting from the participants, sort of. Right. So meaning everything you have whatever sort of labels or codes that they are getting, you already have them. So which means the data has been saturated. So at least maybe when you have when you are going through the transcripts of the participants, the moment you start getting the similar transcripts to the similar codes, similar labels, or arriving at sort of similar themes to the one that you have already arrived at, then it means you have reached saturation. So it also depends on how many people have you sort of interviewed. But if you do not reach, let's say you have, when you are sort of with the text that you would have harvested, that's your data, isn't it? The text. So within that text, if you do not reach a point where you are now replicating the codes or the themes that you have, then you have not reached saturation, which means you must still go and look for more. It could be more policies or more text. Go and harvest more text relating to the question that you are answering or to the topic, you still need to go through the process of data collection again until you reach saturation.
All right, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for clarifying on that question regarding textual analysis. Is there any other questions from the participants or a comment, or you want to share your experiences as Dr. Gabriel mentioned? You may go ahead. Or there's something that is confusing or something that you might not have gotten. Well, maybe any terms.
Nah,
Yeah,
well,
in that
Lawrence,
regard, I guess, Dr. Gabriel, okay, there is a hand raised by Matsiriso. So you may unmute your mic and speak.
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. I've posted on the Q&A section, just wanting to check if you'd recommend Excel coding to analyze data from qualitative modified Delphi method. Thank you.
let me just let me go to the Q&A.
Yes, it says, would you recommend Excel coding to analyze data from qualitative modified Delphi method?
Yeah, the process of okay, whenever you coding, then Excel coding has to be part of that. Why? Because of you are now refining your labels that you would have got into sort of the major themes. That will be the focus of your study. So yes, I would recommend that wherever there's a coding process involved, then Excel coding should be part of it, because it's a part of a coding process. When you analyze text, then if you want to generate themes, then Excel coding surely has to be part of it.
Okay, I see a thumbs up there. I hope you answered there. Matsiriso. All right. Any other question or any comments? Anything that might have confused you that you just need clarity on? That regard, I hope we are all clear. Okay. So in that regard, thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel, for giving us such an insightful presentation on concepts of qualitative data. Once again, I would like to express our appreciation to all the students for participating and our facilitator for time, expertise, and effort. We really do appreciate it so much. As for the participants, please kindly fill in the feedback survey. As I've mentioned, that this also ensures that you get a certificate of attendance for this particular workshop. In that regard, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. Is anything else that you'd like to add before we can conclude the session, before I can end the session?
From my side, Lawrence, I also just thank the participants for taking time to listen to this session and for being part of the session as well. I hope the conversations that we had will be meaningful to the studies that you are doing, and it will enhance the quality of your research. If you are doing using a qualitative research design or a mixed method research design. And I think
In that regard, thank you so much to all the participants again. Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. I'll now be ending the session. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day further. And thank you. Bye. I'll now be ending the session.